Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. I'm Joey Calvo. Our podcast can be heard on the World Podcast Network with over 1,200 podcasts in over 12 genres. You can vote our podcast up the leaderboard by going to https://worldpodcast.network. And if you have a podcast of your own, you can join for free. So today we have the honor and the pleasure of the amazing Hannah Parry. She has deep knowledge of the craft of long and short fiction and has personal experience of publication, self-publication, and rejection. So she'll be able to guide you and give you advice on being an author and being able to deal with the possibility of rejection as you start out as an author. So Hannah, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Joey. It's really, really nice to be here.
Okay. So first thing, I always ask our guests, who are they?
I am Hannah Parry, and I'm an editor and a writer first, really. I live in the UK. I trained originally when I was younger as a pediatric nurse, and I have a daughter. And when my mother died when I was 30, I found myself writing more and more. And as time passed, I ended up doing a degree, and I've continued with the writing ever since. And that's where we are today.
Okay. All right. So you had mentioned, like I said, you had being an author and now a editor and publisher as well. And so what led you into going from being an author to going into self-publishing?
Sorry, Joey, I'm still quite early on in this podcast thing. So sometimes I don't give enough information at the beginning. So I'm learning how to give more information.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. So really, I'm just asking you to expand more on yourself.
Yeah. So I think every author or every writer thinks, or dreams that they're going to write, maybe not initially, but they're going to write something, and it's going to get, if it's a novel, long form fiction is what we call it in this country, that it's going to get eventually, you're going to get rejected, but eventually it's going to get picked up by a publisher and it's going to be published, and then you happily go, I think this is what I thought. Then you'll happily carry on with your writing career as time passes. And I thought that if I wrote the best book I possibly could, and this is after having read, since I was very little, read everything I could get my hands on, I thought that would be my future. And it turned out to not be like that, because the first two books that I wrote were middle grade, which is age 9 to 11, although any age can read them, historical fiction. And historical fiction is not a marketable, it's a very tiny niche market. And although there are some incredibly successful books within that genre, it was too hard. I guess the book just wasn't good enough. I thought it was good enough, but it wasn't good enough. So it wasn't picked up. So by this time I'd done a master's. I started doing a master's in creative writing. And one of my teachers just said to me, just self-publish it yourself. Just publish it yourself. You're not getting any luck with the publishers. So I went and I published that one. Then I wrote the next one, self-published those two. And then I went to write I had an idea for an adult commercial women's fiction book, which I wrote. And that did get me, I got an agent and it went out to publishers. But because it was about the NHS, which is our National Health Service, and it was quite, from my experiences as a nurse, it went out the first month of COVID, in March 2020, it went out to publishers, and they put it this way: they were looking for something different than a dark medical thriller at that time. You know, they were looking for cozy mysteries, and so my timing was terrible. I think the book was okay. I published it last December, self-published it again, and when I look at the reviews, I think actually that book was okay. It's just you're at the mercy of timing, actually.
Yeah.
And a book that I'm just about to self-publish, again, I wrote it during lockdown. Well, the whole world wrote a book during lockdown. Every writer in the world was writing something.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get that in with everybody else. It was also a very, I think it was quite a difficult to market book. So I think that if I think that all I want is for someone to just read what I've written and enjoy it, self-publishing works for me.
Okay.
I'm never going to be rich, Joey, but self-publishing.
You know what? Never say never, because you know that the niche could turn around and pick up, and off to the races you go. Like I thought I didn't expect this, like this podcast that I've been doing. This actually started out as audio. Mm-hmm. Okay. We went to the YouTube right around the pandemic in 2020, and I never thought that I would have done 150, 160 episodes.
Wow.
In 5 years. I didn't expect that. There's one podcast I did a couple of months ago with a young lady from Kuala Lumpur who's a singer, and the podcast only lasted 15, 16 minutes. And on YouTube, it got over 1,600 views.
Wow.
And that is and nobody, I'm not saying, this may not, but I didn't expect 1,600 people to jump on and watch a 16-minute chat, but she had that fan base where she literally went out on Twitter, on Instagram, and all her social media, and literally just told them, "Hey, here's the YouTube link for the podcast that I did for the first time, first podcast I ever did," and boom, it turned out very well, and we got comment. She got a comment about it. And I was like praising her left and right. And, I always tell her if she ever wants to come back on the podcast, to let me know. Mm-hmm. But she's also been a supporter as well. She, when I post it, she'll like it, just like anything that she posts on Twitter, on X, formerly Twitter, or on Instagram, I would like it as well, just to support her for what she did for me.
Yes.
So, but we didn't expect, like I said, I didn't expect to go 160 episodes plus, and especially
you have to be in to win, don't you? Though, if you're not doing it, you'll never know, will you?
Right. That's right. So, and most recently, in reference to this podcast, like I said, the one that, the 16-minute one that did 1,620, like I said, about over 1,600 views on YouTube. We actually stopped the audio version of it because when I was recording them, they changed the app around so that you couldn't record them from your app anymore. You had to actually create your own audio version and then download it onto it. So I was like, it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
So I just took the podcast from the original audio and just made it to YouTube. So now so now with YouTube, we're getting 16, 20, 30, some odd views, etc.
I saw that.
Yeah. So So it and then and plus I'll pop up and sometimes do what's coming up on the podcast, or if I couldn't find any more guests, I might end it. Because I couldn't just keep going by myself on it because I would run out of topics so quickly.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to burn myself out on it.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
So like I said, so that's why when people reached out to me and said, "Listen, yeah, I'd love to be a guest on your podcast. I heard about it and so on." And you saw how quickly I jumped on and said, "Listen, this is what goes on. This is when I do it. If you decide you want to do it, reach me here. Let's set it up."
Yeah.
So that's what I do now in reference to it. And then, most of them say, "Oh, yeah, I want to do it." And you turn around and you tell them, then they turn around, "Oh, okay, well, how big is how many subscribers do you have on your YouTube channel?" I mean, there are some actually that if they really want to be on your podcast, they want you to have at least 1,000 subscribers. They want to make sure they have a big audience to go to. Well, right. You can't get a big audience sometimes out of a small podcast.
No.
And the only way that you could is if, you turn around and paid for it.
Yeah.
And we don't have a budget where, I'm not like Joe Rogan, who had, who just got a $250 million contract with Sirius XM, or the Kelsey brothers, who just got a $150 million contract and get to produce it themselves. I don't edit them. So if you turned around and cursed out, I leave it in there.
Yeah.
I try to make this an actual natural type podcast to where, if you want to curse out, go for it.
I try really hard not to.
No, I'm just saying though, in reference to it. So,
but it's if you've got, it must be really difficult though, because there must be a lot of new people who want to talk about the stuff they've created, and they don't have a big following. I don't have a big following. I have readers, but I wouldn't say, I'd say my followers are about that big. Who want to talk on, hone how they present themselves on a podcast and go on. I don't see how, as a small creative person, you can expect to go on a big podcast. Surely you just go, well, I'll just go where anybody wants to talk about books,
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, what I normally do is I will, after the podcast is done, I'll link it to my Facebook, or I'll link it to the Instagram, or I'll link it to the X account, and I'll throw a few people out and say, "Here, check this out." And some of them will turn around and like it, and others, and when I normally post it on Facebook, is where some of the people that I know will go on there and they'll start either knocking it down or "Hey, great job," but one thing I will say in reference to doing this podcast is I always literally will state if I'm making a difference, I want to see the proof. So, like I said, in reference to the and I apologize for the background noise.
That's okay.
That's my actual cell phone. Um, so, but in reference to I always look for the proof that if I'm making a difference, I want to see it to believe it.
Hmm.
So, I have learned over the past year about that proof, and I'm going to introduce you to our questionnaire, quote unquote. She is and I explained to Hannah before the podcast started, and I've spoken to her about her on this podcast many, many times. She is a real life superheroine. She has been the number one podcast fan. She has been the support and the motivation to keep me going. As much as I wanted to end this podcast, this person would not let me. Because if I had stopped, I wouldn't make a difference anymore. So I'm going to introduce everyone again to American Fox. So bear with me one moment. This is American Fox. She is, like I said, the podcast's number one superheroine, number one fan, number one supporter. And the first question she had for you, Hannah, is what made you go into this artistic field?
I wrote down loads of things about this. I think the first thing to say is that I never thought of it as any kind of option for me. I used to, I had quite a, I lived in the States for quite a long time, and I used to get homesick, and I would go and buy a bottle of wine, and I would sit on the sidewalk cafe and drink, or inside rather, because you weren't allowed to drink on the street inside. Okay. And I would write stuff down. I'd just write rubbish down, I'm homesick, I want to do this, and where's my life going? And I was really young. I was only sort of 22, 23. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but it turns out that was probably a precursor to the writing. And then I wrote something for a friend who got married when I was about 30. And I remember thinking it was for a kind of book, a big book with photos in it. I remember thinking I really enjoyed writing that. And then a few years later, I read a book which I thought was so awful. This thought came into my mind, and I thought I could write a better book than that. And then a voice came in my head, and it just went, well, why don't you then, if you'll, put your money where your mouth is. And so I did. So I sat down and started. So it was kind of a very gradual thing. It wasn't something. And what I found, I just found that I really enjoyed it, and I could write things down, and I could work out how I felt about the world when I was writing things down. So I suppose that's what I was doing when I was much younger, with my bottle of wine, trying to find out what I thought about everything, and using stories as a way of working stuff out. And if I write a story that I like, I sort of thought, if I like it, maybe somebody else might want to read it too. But I write for myself first, if that makes sense.
Okay. So kind of like you're kind of, the way what you're saying is in reference to you go out and you write something, and you proofread it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you think that it's good enough, then you go out and publish it and then put it out there for everybody else to see. And then
Yeah.
if it becomes Barnes and Noble's top 10, most sold, then it's there. Or Amazon's top 10, or etc. Like the Billboard music charts.
Exactly.
If it's hitting, it's hitting. If it's not, it's not. And like I explained earlier, I didn't expect this one podcast that only lasted 16 minutes to have 1,600 views. Like
And
I said,
you don't know what, nobody knows what's going to sell until it sells, do they?
Right.
There's such a good quote, right? Suddenly it just goes, things go bananas.
Right. And then like I said, in reference to our number one fan here, I've done podcasts about her, and the first time I did it, maybe about 20 views. The second time, it got up a little bit more, and then recently I reintroduced her one more time and got another 20, possibly another 20. And then what happened was a guest who had to reschedule at the last moment. So I turned around and did it again and talked about, her, and we got 30 plus views. So I was really happy about that.
Yeah.
So the next question we have from American Fox is, where did you get ideas that influence your work?
Yeah, this is a big one, isn't it? I think as you live your life day to day, or as I live my life day to day, I think for everybody, stuff is always going in, isn't it? It's going in, and we're thinking about things. I think about things a lot, and what I have found is that I have a lot of thoughts about things. So I just, in my general day to day, I have thoughts about this and old age and dying and, children, and thoughts about stuff. But when I know that I've actually got an idea that might have legs, that's something different. And that is often the result of maybe 2 or 3 of those ideas all coming together at the same time, which is something that I don't think I've got any control over. But it might be that I have one thought, like the novel that I brought out before Christmas. I was doing the laundry and I was loading the laundry into the dryer. And I thought, how would it be if I weighed 500 pounds and I wanted to do my laundry? How would I get down to load the dryer? Well, I guess I just wouldn't. And then I thought about, how would it be if you were that heavy and you're trying to live on a day-to-day basis? Because the character, she started out very heavy, but she actually ended up the other way around, and she ended up with an eating disorder in the published book. And then I was thinking about this character, and then I wanted to know why she was that heavy. So then that was the next step. Why does this person I'm imagining do the things she does? And then suddenly I thought, what would happen if she had a really important job, like being a doctor? Imagine if you were a doctor and you, mostly the other way round, she's terribly, terribly thin, and it's sort of like makes you very vulnerable to be that thin, and people know that you're not well. And I wondered what it would be like to have an important job where everybody knows you're not well and you're supposed to be healing other people. So it's a developmental thing. And I know when it's a good idea. I think what I think is a good idea because I feel it in my chest and I get excited about it. And I suppose probably maybe my heart starts beating a bit faster. But that is where the ideas, they don't come out of the blue. Like this book I've just written is called The Baby Exchange, and it's a bit like Hunger Games, actually. It's about reality television, giving a baby away, an unwanted baby away on reality television. And it was because my friend's niece had something called a cryptic pregnancy when she was 17, which is when a female doesn't know she's pregnant until she's about to deliver. And it's very common, happens in 1 in 400 pregnancies. And I had that. And I also had my teenage daughter was watching Love Island. So I was sort of watching Love Island, and I was talking to my friend about her niece, and these two things kind of came together. And so does that make sense? That's how it works for me.
Okay. So
yeah.
So before I get to that, the last question, how would you feel about something like this? Would this be an interest to you to expand? Maybe even as you're maybe doing something like a podcast where you can reach out to other authors and brainstorm ideas, or because I've had other authors on, and matter of fact, some of them even just one that I just had on the podcast a couple weeks ago just shipped me 2 of his books, and he just came out with a 4th book. And I normally don't do a lot of reading, so I haven't touched them yet, per se. But what I will say is, since I've done this podcast, I've made some great friends.
Yeah.
And of course, meeting the number one fan here just came out of the blue because I'm into Wonder Woman,
Yeah.
And so what I'm actually going to do, so just bear with me one moment. I'm actually going to show you the actual. That's actually her,
I love her outfit. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, she's actually an Amazon just like Wonder Woman. The only difference between the two is Wonder Woman has a lasso of truth. She doesn't.
Yeah.
But she has the same strength as an Amazon. She has the same type abilities as Wonder Woman. But again, no lasso.
Yeah. But I loved Wonder Woman when I was young. God, that was my favorite show.
Well, believe it or not, Hannah, in a moment I could actually there is a way that you can reach out to her. She is on Instagram and she is on Twitter. So I'm gonna bring that up, and you can write that down, and you can chat with her because she loves chatting with people. She loves making new friends. Matter of fact, even if you and which now brings up to this question that I do have that she does have for you in reference to it, and the question is this: do you have interest in the superhero area that could be associated with your work?
I love this question. I love all the superhero. I watch the movies. I'm not an expert. I mean, I don't know the Marvel universe off by heart or anything like that, but I think I've seen pretty much all of the movies. I've seen Wonder Woman. I've seen, I just saw, what was the one Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine with Ryan Reynolds and
Yeah.
and
that was funny. I laughed my head off.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
No, I am not much of a Marvel fan.
Oh, okay.
But in reference to Wonder Woman, I did see, and I will quote, I did see Wonder Woman in 2017.
Yeah.
When it first came out.
Yeah.
And I did see Wonder Woman 84 when it came out in 20. I turned around and actually bought the DVDs through like Redbox.
Oh, yeah.
I bought them used.
Yeah.
And I have them. So I don't even play them, only because people said, "Oh, Wonder Woman wasn't great," and then Wonder Woman 84 wasn't as great either. But they were both actually interesting. The only difference is the adjustment on how Gal Gadot portrayed her as compared to the original when Linda Carter played her on TV.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's those other versions in between, like the 1974 version with Kathy Lee Crosby, but that was a TV.
I know that one.
Yeah. You can actually find that on YouTube.
Yeah.
But the 1974 version of Wonder Woman, it portrayed her as like not like you would see like you would have seen it on TV or in the movies.
Yeah.
And then when they tried to when they made the attempt to bring it back in 2011 with Adrian Palicki, they kind of made it almost like American Fox here. Uniform-wise.
Yeah.
Costume-wise.
Yeah.
And so it never really got out there. It never, they did the pilot.
I never saw that pilot. I wasn't really aware of that 2011 one. So it obviously didn't really get off the ground.
It never made it to air.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, it never made it to air. So it was canceled before it got picked up.
Okay. Oh, that's a shame. Okay.
Yeah.
I did really like Gal Gadot, though. I liked that film. I thought that was really good.
Yeah. I mean, but what happened, though, now is Warner Brothers is rebranding the DC Universe. And now James Gunn is in control of the DC Universe. And he turned around and said, "You know what? Gal Gadot's done as Wonder Woman." And I'm like, okay, who are you going to get her to? Who are you going to get to portray Wonder Woman? He is making changes left and right. He got a whole new Superman. He actually created a Supergirl. But not like the Helen Slater version in 1984. This is a whole totally different Supergirl. So if you ever get a chance, you definitely want to check out the 1984 version of Supergirl, movie-wise, with Helen Slater.
Oh, okay, I will.
Yeah, it was okay. It was interesting, and of course, you had the late Christopher Reeve, who did 5 or 6 Superman movies.
Yeah,
and then you turn around, and then you had all these others that came in and did Superman, and they were okay, but not the greatest. And then when Henry Cavill was the last Superman, it became a buzz again. But nothing can actually go really back to when the TV version of Superman was out back in the 50s.
Yeah.
George Reeves. That everybody dropped to watch that version. Now, I kind of being I wasn't. I mean, I watched it when I was little, being born in the 70s, but there was a Lois and Clark version with Dean Cain, and that wasn't a bad version. It was very interesting. And then, of course, when Warner Brothers turned around and started to pick up the DC series and created Smallville, I mean, that blew out and really, really brought Superman out.
Yeah. Yeah.
As they did,
I enjoyed that.
Yeah. But as they did Superman, they also, redid Batman.
Yeah.
And, and then now, there's not many more DC on TV outside of maybe HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, if you go on a channel, it's called H&I on cable.
Mm-hmm.
You can see all the original Wonder Woman episodes.
Oh, really?
On the weekends.
That's nice.
They also show the Batman episodes. I think they show the Superman episodes as well. The original Superman episodes. But in reference to American Fox, we actually had talked about expanding, bringing her out into more of the public eye. But because she doesn't have a secret identity. Growing up in the 70s, they had, of course, they had the Super Friends cartoon. They had Isis, of course, Wonder Woman, like I said, and then Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. But they also came out with Plastic Man, and Plastic Man really didn't have a secret identity. I mean, he would walk around and he's in his costume 24/7. Well, American Fox is as well. She's in it 24/7, and no secret identity. She's not the Diana Prince, as much as you could take a look at her and she could look like Diana Prince, hands down. But she definitely, being an Amazon, she has that strength like Wonder Woman. And we had been emailing back and forth ideas about bringing her out and really introducing her to the mainstream. But at the same time, we did run in. There is a little issue that we would have to take care of in reference to it. But I turned around and reached out to people that I knew that could possibly brought it out. But at the same time, if that actually happened, what I would actually do is, instead of it being in my hands, I would leave it to her, because it's her, this is her life that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, so if you ever decided to do a superhero type novel, I mean, you could always reach out to her and say, hey, let's work on an idea for a book.
Yeah.
Because she actually, and like I said, she actually loves talking to real people about superheroes. I mean, she'll go all out on it. So, for those that are into superheroines, here is how you can actually reach out to her on X, formerly Twitter. It's at American Fox 4. And normally, in reference to on X, what she normally does is she'll repost other superheroines.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is a cosplayer. There are what they call cosplayers that we both know of.
Yeah.
There's one in Colombia. Her name, actually, believe it or not, is Linda Lucia Carter. No lie, real name, Linda Lucia Carter, but on X, Instagram, Facebook, she goes by Linda Carter Cosplayer, and YouTube. She is on YouTube under Linda Carter Cosplayer. And so I follow her, and you know, every Saturday she actually does what Linda Carter Cosplayer actually does on Saturdays is she actually does a video short. If it's not a remake of the actual scene from the original series, she'll create an original one of her own.
Yeah. Oh, that's
good. And she gets a lot of views. I mean, guys like go crazy about her. I mean, literally a majority of the time I look at the comments. I mean, I'll compliment her and say, that truly beautiful, that you'll always be this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, she always replies back to me and thanks me for doing it. But a majority of the time, guys will go on there and literally just put like bulging heart eyes, or they'll put memes on, not either memes, or they'll put the little emojis.
Yeah.
And really don't say anything.
No.
Now, in reference to American Fox, I do the best possible to really introduce her to like YouTube and on Facebook and Instagram and so on. And like I said, she loves talking to people and chatting about superheroines because building that bond could lead to more, and like I'm saying to you in reference to you get this interest in wanting to write about a superheroine. Here you go. Here's someone you can
a real life one.
A real life one that you can indirectly base it off of.
Yeah.
And you can reach out to her, and believe it or not, she's also on Instagram, like I said, at American Fox 12018.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, like I said, if you're gonna reach out to her, comment, because that's the only way she's gonna know that you're interested in getting to know her. Because and I come across this, and I actually say something to her about it. Most people that will comment, or they won't comment, they'll like the picture.
Yeah.
They'll like the post.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and you go to look and you find out it's one of those bots.
Yeah.
And they turn around, oh, you have to go on this OnlyFans or this web, they always promote nudity.
Yeah.
So I turn around and I wind up blocking them because I'm like, hey, you're not a real person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
I'll check her out. Thank you.
Yeah. So and I get that even on X now as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have some that turn around and like, oh, they like the picture, they like your post. Oh, perfect music.
Sorry, that's terrible, isn't it?
It was actually interesting. Now, if we did something, if I had done an American Fox type like scene and going into a commercial, that would be perfect music for it. And she, like I said, she actually does. I'm going to be very honest. When I do these podcasts, she sees them.
Mm-hmm.
And she will actually turn around and say, well, you could have done this. I mean, she will literally be the critic.
Yeah. Like your producer.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but if I'm telling her, listen, I talked about you most of the time. She she will turn around and she'll be like, well, thank you so much, and I loved what you did and how it rolled along, and so that's definitely one thing. Now, like I said, in reference to, like I'm saying to you, if you go on Twitter or go on Instagram and you go on her accounts,
I'll leave a comment.
there is a way you can reach out to her
Mm-hmm.
outside of that. And if you do, now, Hannah, if you decide to reach out to her, tell her, listen, I heard the Life with Joey Calvin podcast talks so much about you. I want to get to know you, etc. Believe me, she will probably have a smile from ear to ear and then turn around and email me and say, you know what? Somebody actually mentioned you to me and actually said, all this great stuff. And believe me, she loves to hear it.
Yeah.
She, like I said, she loves talking to real people. I was on Twitter.
Is she a real person?
Yes, she is. I will not lie to you. She is a real person. Because if she wasn't real, Hannah, there wouldn't be an email.
No, true.
I mean, she could turn around and say that she's that, but really not. But as I've gotten to know her, I take that thought out of my mind.
Yeah.
Because again, if she wasn't a real person, I wouldn't get an actual physical email or even these questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why,
Does she work in your business, or is she just somebody that you met through podcasting?
Actually, when I mentioned about Twitter, I actually came across her that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we went from there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, in reference to her, during that time, we built a bond, and I admitted it to her on this. You know how there in the comics, how Wonder Woman fell in love with Steve Trevor,
mm-hmm.
and in the TV series, you really didn't see the real. You saw the connection, but it never was fully there. And in Wonder Woman 84, you saw that with Gal Gadot. You saw her actually, even though realizing that at the time, Steve Trevor was actually a kind of a ghost type figure until, somehow he got out of, he came back to life. And you saw that romantic bond, in Wonder Woman 84.
The TV one wasn't.
It was the TV one that you really didn't see it.
Did you? No,
you didn't really see it. So, but it was there because indirectly in the first season, she, mentions. Well, she doesn't mention love, but she mentions how close she wanted to be in order to be there for him if he was in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of saw that bond, and that you wind up seeing for the 3 seasons that it was on. But you never really saw it any deeper. But there was one episode. It was actually The Return of Wonder Woman. It was season 2, the first episode, the pilot, the actual season premiere, season 2. It was and there was a robot version, kind of Steve Trevor, and he went to Diana's house and actually wanted to reach. Actually, you saw him actually try to reach out to Diana and wanted to kiss her. And she caught wind of it, and she's like, wait a minute. He never did this before. And then, to find out it wasn't really him.
Mm-hmm.
It was a robot.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, it played out to where, she had a fight, she had a battle, she had the sword duel. And to find out the actual sword duel wasn't really the guy, the actual villain himself, but it was a robot villain of him.
Oh, right. That was in the TV show.
Yeah, that was in the TV. That was the season premiere of the second season.
Mm-hmm.
In reference to when it became the Return of Wonder Woman.
Right.
The New Adventures of Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where that came from. So, but definitely, like I said, if you wrote those down, Hannah, and you follow her on Instagram and Twitter, on Instagram, she only has one post. It's that picture that you see right there. Like I said, comment. She would love to hear from you. And if you do reach out, like I said, to her, please let her know. Hey, I heard about you on the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. Let's chat.
Okay.
And believe me, you may learn more than you would ever think. She may turn around and, she'll explain about what she does and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. And like I said, definitely, like, physically really reach out to her, comment, because, like I said, otherwise it's like a bot.
Yeah, exactly.
And
sure.
and it's like, it feels like a waste.
Yeah.
But like I said, when she sees these videos, she'll turn around and say, you know what? Thank you for bringing me out on YouTube. And I actually, believe it or not, I have asked her to come on this podcast.
Has she got her own podcast?
No, she doesn't. No. We talked about that. Matter of fact, she actually encouraged me to I had wanted to do a superhero podcast where I would talk like about her or Spider-Woman or Supergirl or Batgirl or and I reached out to cosplayers. I did have a cosplayer actually on this podcast before, who does X-Men.
Yeah.
And she's in the if you go on the Life with Joey Calvo live section of the videos, you will see her.
Mm-hmm.
She actually was dressed up in cosplay when we did it.
Cool.
But it all came back to, guess who? American Fox.
Yeah.
She was like,
cool.
You should have her on in cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, no, I want to see the actual person behind the cosplay.
Yeah.
I'd rather see that. I did have another one, but an issue came up to where we had to delete it.
Yeah.
And it was a very good one. She was a Wonder Woman cosplayer, believe it or not. things kind of fell apart on it, and a little jealousy kind of happened out of it.
Okay.
But it worked.
Yeah.
It like I said, I had to delete it, and it really wasn't the. I can't say it wasn't. It was a great podcast, like this one is right now. I mean, we practically have talked almost the whole hour. It's supposed to be reflected on the guests, but we turned around and we reflected on American Fox, which is okay because if it's helping you, Hannah, come up with ideas to expand your publishing, or come up with
really
more.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was thinking about how to link the book I'd written with the superhero genre, and actually, there's a ton of ways that a medical thriller can be linked to a superhero. You can have genetic mutations. You can have a doctor who's a superhero, who she's a doctor by day and she's a superhero by night. I mean, the list is kind of endless, and it wasn't something I'd ever thought about before. It's hilarious.
Well, I can answer those questions for you right now. In reference to the genetic mutation, that's Marvel.
Yeah.
That's the X-Men.
Yeah.
In reference to an actual doctor who is a doctor by day and superhero by night is actually, I believe, was Doctor Strange.
Was that Doctor Strange?
I think that's Doctor Strange. I think he is Marvel.
The Doctor.
But there's also Dr. Fate.
Mm-hmm.
And he's DC.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in reference to American Fox, nurse by day, superheroine at night.
Mm.
I would say yes.
Doesn't have to be
right. But I mean, it doesn't have to be a nurse. But I mean, doing a daytime job and then going out at night, like Barbara Gordon, Batgirl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who is a librarian during the day.
That's right. She was a librarian, wasn't she?
And then goes out at night. But American Fox, a majority of the time, she does fight crime more at nighttime.
Yeah.
But if you reach out to her, that's something you can discuss, like I said.
Yeah.
And really, really say, let me pick your brain and say, let's come up with an idea for a superheroine that is a nurse during the day. Now, if we went back, and we're actually going to go over an hour, just to let you know, because this conversation is getting really good, and I'm enjoying this. And I know American Fox, when she watches this, will be smiling ear to ear, and I think we'll be playing it like 500,000 times. But if you remember the pilot episode of Wonder Woman in 1975.
I don't think I can remember the exact. I definitely watched it then, but I don't think I can remember the exact one.
Okay. Well, what happened was, this is the Linda Carter version.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, when she brought Steve back to the United States from Paradise Island, she actually, after she carried Steve into the hospital, she went back later on and actually was dressed as a nurse.
Yeah.
And then she found out that Steve had left the hospital, and she goes out into a secluded area and transforms into Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, yes, she was a nurse. She did portray a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
But also in the comics,
Yeah.
if you go back to the original 40s version, the original beginning of Wonder Woman, she actually meets up with a Diana Prince who was a nurse.
Huh. Yeah.
And, takes over her identity and so on. And that Diana
cool.
runs off.
Ah.
So you have to go back to the comics.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I will tell you about American Fox that surprised me, like I said, we can talk superheroines like Batgirl, Supergirl, but she'll talk more of the TV and movies, but never read a comic book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I have
it's
kind
quite
of introduced her
a niche time to read the comics, isn't it?
Yeah. She never had time to read them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of introduced her to the comic version. Now there's AI versions, artificial intelligence versions of superheroines.
Yeah.
And now they're getting interesting. But they're not. I'd rather see an actual live version of someone portraying a super identity, secret identity, transforming into a superheroine, like Linda Lucia Carter, like Linda Carter cosplayer, or some of these other cosplayers, that turn around and are. I mean, there's other adult actresses, I'll say, like Christina Carter, or Rachel Steele. Now, I tried to get them on the podcast. Remember, I mentioned to you offhand, off before this podcast started, that in order for me to have them on the podcast, you had to have so many subscribers.
Yeah.
Rachel Steele was one of them.
Oh, okay.
She wanted me, like, if you didn't have 10,000, 20,000 subscribers, she wanted nothing to do with you.
Is she an actress? Sorry, I'm a bit.
She's an adult actress.
Okay.
Yeah, she's considered an adult actress,
right.
but she does Wonder Woman. But her version and the Christina Carter version of Wonder Woman is spelled different than the original version, so it doesn't plagiarize DC.
Okay.
So,
okay.
So American Fox.
Thank you. I've got all the.
Thank you so much for. Hannah actually is now interested in reaching out to you, and if she does reach out to you, you know where it came from. It didn't,
Absolutely. But I'll go and check her out. I've got all her details, so I'll go and check her out. But thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So now back to you, Hannah. How can people reach out to you?
Probably the best way would be either on Instagram. I am Black Cat Parry. All one word. Black
wait. I noticed that in your bio, and I got to go back to American Fox for a second. You know how you mentioned just now about Black Cat?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of her favorite superheroines she likes to talk about.
Oh, is it?
She will talk about we've talked about Black Cat. Matter of fact, and I don't know, maybe you'll be able to look this up on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But there was two other superheroines, kind of, Well, one was a cop during the day and a superheroine at night.
Yeah.
And we have talked about it. I actually did watch it, and went by the name Black Scorpion.
Ah, okay. I
So
don't know
if you
that.
go, so if you go on YouTube
Yeah.
and you type in Black Scorpion,
Mm-hmm.
there's two versions.
Mm-hmm.
The first version was actually on HBO, and it was kind of like the late Roger Corman series.
I don't know who that is.
Roger Corman did like B type movies, quote unquote.
Right. Okay.
But two of them that he actually did, one was called Vampirella, and the other one was called Black Scorpion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, they were on like HBO or Showtime, and were shown late at night. So you got to see the nudity and so on.
Yeah.
In reference to it. But he was very good. And the Black Scorpion version, really, I mean, that version that Roger Corman did really was interesting. And it had an actress by the name of Joan Severance portraying the main character.
Yeah.
And the secret identity of Black Scorpion.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Now, in reference to Vampirella, there was no secret identity like American Fox.
Mm-hmm.
She was Vampirella all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she was played by, believe it or not, and I believe this is the same person that was in the Rocky movies with Sylvester Stallone. No, she wasn't. Correction, she wasn't. But the actress that portrayed Vampirella in the Roger Corman series, her name was Talisa Soto.
Yeah.
And she was a very beautiful Vampirella. I mean, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, it was shown on HBO. If you search it on YouTube, you will find it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll
you
have
may
a look.
find it, or if you don't find it under Vampirella, you might find it under Talisa Soto. Or now, in reference to Black Scorpion, there was, like I said, two versions. There was the original Roger Corman version that was Joan Severance, but then TNT, Turner Network Television at the time, picked it up much later and updated it and had an actress by the name of Michelle Lintel portraying the character. And I kind of was like, it was okay, but it didn't give you the feeling of the Roger Corman version. Because of course the Roger Corman version was a little bit, how I state this, as dirty.
Yeah.
Because of course, it's shown late. It was shown on a late night time. So
could I? I'm really sorry. I've got to go and get my daughter from the station.
Oh yeah, no problem. I was just about to tell you, finish up how they can reach out to you.
Yeah,
and thank you for the extended time, and I apologize for extending it.
That's okay.
Like I said, this conversation of superheroines really went out. So
no, I love it.
Like I said, American Fox.
I'll check her out.
Love this.
Yeah. But if anyone wants, they can just get me at hannahparry.com. That's the easiest way. Everything that I've done is on there, so they can click through to that. That would be fantastic.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much, Joey.
You're welcome, Hannah. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching the Life with Joey Cava YouTube live stream. God bless you all. Take care.
Take care of yourself.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.